Amy dreaded each morning at Cedar Valley Middle School. As the principal's son, Jack seemed untouchable as he tormented her daily with cruel pranks and public humiliation. When Sarah, Amy's mother, finally decided to take action, the principal entered his office that morning to find something that made him collapse in his chair. What this mother did shocked the entire school. The sounds of laughter and chatter filled the hallways of Cedar Valley Middle School as students rushed to their morning classes. But for 13-year-old Amy Chen, these familiar noises only filled her with dread. Her hands shook as she approached her locker, hoping today would be different. It wasn't. The moment she turned the combination lock, a cascade of books tumbled out, their pages stained purple with grape juice. The sticky liquid dripped onto her new shoes as cruel laughter echoed from down the hall. Jack Thompson, the principal's son, stood with his usual group of followers pointing and snickering at his latest masterpiece. 2 months. That's all it had taken for Cedar Valley Middle School to transform from Amy's fresh start into her daily nightmare. She'd arrived full of hope, eager to make new friends and embrace the adventure of a new school. Instead, she'd become the favorite target of the school's untouchable king. Jack's reign of terror was methodical and relentless. He never left evidence, never got caught, but everyone knew he was behind it all. One day, Amy's carefully completed homework would vanish minutes before class. The next, she'd discover cruel notes taped to her back, only noticing after hours of whispers and stifled giggles. During lunch, mysterious accidents would send food trays flying onto her clothes. The worst part wasn't the pranks themselves, it was the silence that followed them. Students who witnessed Jack's cruelty would quickly look away, afraid of becoming his next target. Even those who showed Amy kindness in private would pretend not to see her in the hallways. In a school of hundreds, she'd never felt more alone. At home, the changes in Amy were impossible to ignore. Her mother, Sarah, watched helplessly as her once vibrant daughter dimmed like a light, being slowly turned off. The girl who used to bounce out of bed, excited for school, now clutched her stomach every morning, begging to stay home. Her straight A grades had plummeted. The eager stories about new friends had been replaced by silence. Sarah knew something was terribly wrong, but Amy kept insisting everything was fine. It wasn't until she discovered tear-stained homework crumpled in the trash that the truth began to emerge. One quiet evening as they sat together in the kitchen, Amy finally broke down and told her everything. For Sarah, hearing about Jack's bullying awakened something fierce within her. As a former prison counselor, she'd spent years working with troubled individuals, helping them confront their demons and find better paths. But this was different. This was her daughter, her baby, being systematically broken down day after day. The school's response only added to her frustration. Teachers seemed to tiptoe around the issue, making vague promises to keep an eye on things. The guidance counselor suggested Amy try avoiding conflict situations, as if being ambushed at her own locker was somehow her fault. Everyone knew why nothing real was being done. How do you discipline the principal's son without risking your job? Sarah considered every option. She could demand a meeting with the principal, but would that only make things worse for Amy? She could transfer her daughter to another school, but wouldn't that teach Amy that bullies win? As she wrestled with these questions, fate intervened in an unexpected way. It happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. Sarah was working late at her new private counseling practice, finishing up paperwork, when movement outside her window caught her eye. Through the drizzle, she spotted a familiar figure walking alone on the sidewalk. Jack Thompson. But this wasn't the Jack she'd heard about from Amy. Gone was the swagger, the arrogant confidence that ruled the school halls. Instead, his shoulders were hunched, his steps heavy as he carried 2 plastic grocery bags filled with microwavable meals. When a car backfired nearby, he flinched violently, looking around with an expression Sarah had seen countless times in her work, the look of someone desperately afraid of being alone. That moment sparked her professional instincts. Something wasn't adding up. The next day she began making discreet inquiries around town. The story she uncovered broke her heart. 6 months ago, Jack's mother had lost her battle with cancer. His father, Principal Thompson, had retreated into his grief and his work, leaving Jack essentially alone in an empty house. The pieces started falling into place, the timing of Jack's escalating bullying, the microwave meals, the fear in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. Sarah recognized the signs of a child crying out for help in the only way he knew how. But she didn't confront Jack or his father. Instead, she went home and pulled out her mother's old recipe box. That evening, she prepared a large pan of homemade lasagna, the kind her own mother used to make when the world felt too big to handle. She wrapped it carefully, drove to the Thompson house, and left it on their doorstep with a simple note: "Someone cares." The next evening, she returned to find the pan untouched. Undeterred, she replaced it with fresh chicken soup. This continued for days. Meatloaf, shepherd's pie, mac and cheese, each meal left with the same simple message. Gradually, the containers began disappearing inside. 2 weeks passed. Sarah kept her nightly deliveries secret even from Amy. Then came the parent-teacher conference she'd been dreading. She arrived prepared for confrontation, but the man she met wasn't the intimidating principal she'd expected. Principal Thompson looked exhausted, his tie loose, his eyes heavy with something deeper than ordinary fatigue. As they discussed Amy's falling grades, something shifted in his expression. "You know," he said, his voice softer than before, "Jack's been different lately. Calmer. He's even been leaving dinner in the microwave for me." His voice cracked. "I haven't had a home-cooked meal since—" He couldn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Sarah saw the grief etched in every line of his face. Without planning to, she found herself confessing to the anonymous deliveries. As she described finding Jack alone in the rain, something in Principal Thompson seemed to break. "Energy drinks," he whispered. "My son's been living on energy drinks and microwave burritos, and I didn't even notice. Claire would be so—" He covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. The office door burst open. Jack stood there, tears streaming down his face. He'd been waiting outside, hearing everything. "I just wanted someone to notice," he sobbed. "Mom noticed everything, every test score, every scraped knee, every bad day. Then suddenly no one was there anymore." The truth poured out of him. How bullying others had made him feel in control when everything else was spinning apart. How seeing others hurt had somehow made his own pain feel less lonely. How the mysterious meals had been the first time since his mother's death that he felt someone, anyone, cared whether he was okay. Sarah's simple act of kindness had cracked open something that grief had sealed shut. That evening, father and son talked for the first time in months about the massive hole in their lives, about the different ways they'd each been drowning in their loss. The next morning at school, something extraordinary happened. Jack approached Amy at her locker. With trembling hands, he held out a letter. In it, he explained everything. About his mom, about his pain, about how hurting others had been his way of making the world feel as broken as he did. Amy took time to process his apology. She knew about loss too. Her own father's departure through divorce had left its scars. Slowly, she began to understand that sometimes the cruelest bullies are just lost children, desperate for someone to notice their pain. The anonymous meals continued, but things were different now. Instead of being left on the doorstep, they were shared at the Thompsons' dinner table, where father and son were slowly learning to heal together. Jack and Amy weren't exactly friends, but there was peace between them, the kind that comes from understanding that everyone carries invisible battles. Sarah's act of kindness had rippled out in ways she never expected. She'd shown that sometimes the most powerful way to stop a bully isn't through confrontation, but through compassion. That beneath the cruelest actions often lies a heart crying out to be noticed. And you, what would you do if you discovered your child's bully was fighting battles you never imagined?